What's going on, New Fighting Order fans? This is your co-hosts, Alexlexus and Nelson Rios, a Fighting Game League, coming at you with a review, a dual review. Now, it was supposed to be set up a different way, but like the stream footage that I had for Devil May Cry PC kind of crapped out, so I didn't want to put shit on the podcast. So we're just gonna shoot it, and we have our special guest, Fake Dante. So we give him a round of applause. I'm gonna get the sound effects like we used to do back in the old school shows and stuff. And Nelson, I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so we're pretty much going to give you the nitty gritty of the Devil May Cry reboot that has come out. Now, it's going to be broken up into three sections. We're going to talk about the story, we're going to talk about the gameplay, and the overall presentation. All right? Now, most of you will know that I had a very violent reaction to the whole change, the idea of a reboot to begin with, when the main story wasn't even completed, and just the overhaul, the drastic design. Now, before we delve into this, Nelson, did you hear there's a possible reboot to the Resident Evil franchise for the games?
I was hearing about that because of the fact of what Ninja Theory has proposed for the Devil May Cry series. They actually want to try to actually do the same for all their games of Capcom. So they're trying to take the wild card and see what they can dive in with that.
Well, oh man, it's like Ninja Theory has become Capcom's god or something. Like everything they say, their shit don't stink type of stuff, and I'm not fucking feeling that shit at all. But anyway, the first step of this review, all right, the story. Now, most of you who are following the original timeline, if you were like invested in the story like myself, you kind of feel like you're left at like a cliff where, okay, the end of Devil May Cry 4, they introduce Nero, who's obviously linked to Virgil in some way, and we just never get that full answer. Now, I remember reading on some forums at capcom-unity how they were saying that Nero is Virgil's offspring, but there's never anything in a game that fleshed that out. You know, Nero now is just like, okay, you had Devil May Cry 4, and that's it. And those are the other people who is like, get over it, deal with it, or whatever. You know what? Fuck you guys, because we're in the middle of a story that just won't get a conclusion. Now, I would have been okay with the reboot had they finished the main storyline for whatever universe that Dante is in, and then you can reboot. Okay? And that's why Ninja Gaiden was more accepted. That's why Castlevania was more accepted, because they had somewhat concrete endings where, you know, for the Castlevania side, you have Julius Belmont was actually sealed Dracula away. Now you can't do anything else with it. You have no choice but to reboot and create Lords of Shadow. You know what I mean? Same thing with Ninja Gaiden, the Nintendo trilogy. You know, you had Hayabusa taking on Jackio, beat him twice. Then you had Ashtar and Clancy and all this other stuff. And you had that trilogy. So when they did a reboot / interquel game between Ninja Gaiden 1, 2, and 3 for the Xbox and PS3, it was a breath of fresh air. It wasn't in the middle of a storyline. So, Nelson, what is your response on that before I delve further into the Devil May Cry reboot story? Did I make sense when I said that?
No, you absolutely did. I just don't like when particular games, especially like this particular franchise, you start off with the very first game, which is like, I guess you could call it a middle point, which was Devil May Cry 1. Then when you released Devil May Cry 2, we kind of steered off just a slight bit because we didn't know what time period this was at. And then you had part 3, and it went, further back. Then we made sense of it, but it still, it still came out and explained who was who, what was what. And like I said, a lot of
Yeah, the origin story for
Right,
Dante,
and a lot of
pretty
people
much.
didn't like the fact that when you beat Devil May Cry 4, there was still a lot of like what if possibilities. Like, why is Virgil not there? Why only his sword? Why is this Nero character there, but he looks very similar to Virgil? There's a lot of things is not answered yet. So I would have liked an actual ending towards it instead of just like a cliffhanger type thing like they did with God of War 3 and just finish it. But now we have um, what you call it, a reboot where it makes, really no sense to some people, but you would have to dive into. I don't really want to spoil it for certain people who has yet to play the game, but yeah, it's definitely a drastic
Hmm.
change to what the actual trilogy was.
Now, for the audience, not to cut you off, Nelson, for the audience, there will be major spoilers in this podcast, and I will give you a heads up, especially for like the final two bosses in the game. I don't want to bust that up for you, but I will give you a heads up and then give you like a time frame with the annotations in YouTube and on Twitch TV. All right, so caveating on what Nelson was saying. Now, the Devil May Cry story kind of, okay, you bring in this new Dante with a whole different personality. Everything that made Dante appealing wasn't really there. I think this Dante was a little more potty mouth, a lot more mean spirited in terms of, with a lot of cursing and a lot of like that whole emotional connection with Kat and whatnot. And I mean, that's not the Dante that we were used to. And I get it's a different universe, it's a reboot, but it's just there's an expectation there. There's a definite expectation. It's like making Solid Snake like a homosexual or something. Like, ooh, yeah, liquid. Ooh, you know what I mean? Like, what the fuck? It's not that extreme, but you get what I'm saying? It's just the things that made Dante cool aren't there. But there's some cool things about this Dante. I mean, I can say it's not horrible except for the design. I played the PC version and I refused to use the new design. I did the classic Devil May Cry, and the sucky thing is the DLC skins don't cover through some of the cutscenes, like the pre-rendered ones. So you're pretty much stuck with the black hair or the skunk hair Dante, and but I mean, just the way Dante behaves is just a little bit. It's just different, very different. Now, Virgil, on the other hand, and spoiler alert, the Virgil from the previous series had a sense of honor. Remember Nelson and Devil May Cry 3 when what was that? Was it Arkham? Yeah, who had his own agenda, and Virgil had a sense of honor about him, and in this one, it was just like, what the, he was like low down. He was like low down. What he did to, spoiler alert, 1, 2, 3. Okay, you've been warned. What Virgil did to Mundus, his woman, blowing out the fetus from his woman's belly, then shooting her in the head. I'm like, wow, like that's not something Virgil would do, And I don't know. Before I go on a tangent, Nelson, the two things with the personality changes between the Devil Twins. Can you shed some of your perspective on it?
I know from the previous game with Dante, with the whole potty mouth thing you mentioned, they try to take aspects of that from part 1, because if you remember in Devil May Cry 1, he was somewhat of a shit talker, but they made it too excessive for, I guess you could say, for like the new generation of Devil May Cry fans. And with the whole thing with Virgil, he, like you said, he had a sense of honor, but he was still very dark, but he would play it off like he's a cool, casual guy. Now in here,
he was slick.
Now in here, he's confusing. It's either, one, he looks like a bootleg-ass Wesker, that he's a police officer all of a sudden, just like, don't want to mention a horrible movie, Kings of Fighters. But it's definitely a drastic change to what we're normally used to. Because now it made it seem like Virgil was a punk bitch, like Raiden was in Metal Gear Solid 2. And then all of a sudden, with the spoiler alert, which you just gave just now about the whole Virgil shooting Munis's girl and stuff like that. Like that shit's crazy. Like there's definitely a jump.
Yeah, that was just low down, you know what I mean? And then it was a bit too obvious where you see Virgil kind of his plan kind of taking shape because Dante, those of you who are really paying attention to the story, Dante started seeing like, what the fuck, Virgil, what are you doing? What are you doing? You know what I mean? It was like a Kane and Undertaker type thing where, all of a sudden you start seeing signs of like bullshit from one of the siblings. Like, okay. But then again, I kind of saw the ending coming, but then again, I'm like, nah, I don't think they're going to go that obvious. And then they did. But we'll talk about that later. But other aspects of the story that I wasn't too happy with, the fact that Dante's a Nephilim. Now, the major draw from the original Devil May Cry games was the fact that Dante was half human. That's something that we as the gamer can say, hey, you know what? He's one of us. He's down with us. But now they pulled the Superman complex where he's like a foreign being, okay, and he's protecting mankind. You know what I mean? And I'm pretty sure if you look at it, it's almost as if it's like the Superman complex for this new Dante. And Virgil's reminding him, you're not human, you're not human. And, this is a shout out to Tough Nerd Toys. He made that very point. He said, that's not, how do you feel connected to Dante now? And this is what hurt the Matrix movies, because remember in the first Matrix where Neo was just trying to find himself or so, and he was relatable, like, hey, he can be hurt. And then when Matrix Reloaded came out, he was like godlike, and he became like, oh yeah, you can't see me doing some Cena shit and fighting all the Smiths and fucking them up. It's just, I remember a lot of people saying that they were kind of drawn away from the Matrix Reloaded and the final chapter because of that very fact. So Nelson, what do you think about that? Like Dante being less relatable in terms of his incarnation in the first series as opposed to this one?
Well, they definitely changed it up like drastically. Like for people who don't know, like this would be like a semi-spoiler. I mean, this shouldn't really hurt you, but if you remember from the previous Devil May Cries, Dante was made to just be known as just like, a devil. Just like an incarnate devil of his father, Sparta. Which also they kind of changed in this new Devil May Cry, which I really didn't appreciate.
Yeah, we're going to get on that afterwards.
The fact that he is now both from, I guess you could say, a heaven and hell, like, incarnation of, like, a person now, that kind of, like, throws the whole perspective out the window. I mean, yes, we all wondered who Dante's mother was. Yes, we all wondered, like, how this became about, but this is starting to become, to me, like a typical story now. Like, if you guys want to recall back on the game, like Dante's Inferno. But, yeah, it's just definitely something I can't relate to.
That game did play good, though. I like Dante's Inferno.
Good, but, I will relate that topic when we get to the gameplay portion of it, but I'll leave that right there.
Okay. All right. Now, another aspect of the story that was kind of belittling to the original series is the fact that Sparta was a punk. I mean, what happened to the legendary Dark Knight Sparta? The one that defeated Mundus in the... Not Mundus, it's Mundus, as they got me saying it their way. Yeah, well, I mean, it's whatever. Fuck them. Anyway, the Dark Knight Sparta from the original series sealed the demons away, sealed his demon powers on the other side, and, for the sake of mankind. He was more significant. His significance actually was the same mystery that freaking Goken had, or Akuma had before he became a viable character or a legitimate character in the Street Fighter storyline. Sparta, like, I was hoping if they were to do any other Devil May Cry game, do a Devil May Cry game Origins, where you're playing as Sparta and showing where he betrays the demons for humans, that kind of stuff. That would, I mean, hell, if they felt they were running out of ideas, they should have did that. But Sparta was built up to be such this badass, and then when you're coming into this game, he was just a lieutenant or one of the generals working with the Demon King, and then he falls in love with an angel, and they had to further explain how an angel and a demon got together. It's just like, okay, they fell in love. Okay, flesh that out. Like, how was this forbidden love, coming into fruition? To me, it looked like they took like pieces of Underworld, and you had like Underworld, Rise of the Lycans. You had the vampire and the Lycan, and then they make this hybrid or whatever. I mean, fair enough. I get they were trying to be different, but the fact of the matter is, you punked Sparta. Sparta, he's banished, and he's never coming back. And he's all tied up in chains. Now, to our knowledge before, Sparta, I guess, lived his life with Eva in the original series and died like a human. But he's still alive in this series, imprisoned. What a way to chump Sparta. Unfucking believable. Ninja Theory. I mean, wow. So, Nelson, what are your thoughts on the way they handle Sparta in this game?
Definitely, I did not like the way or the outlook of how Sparta was the supposed legendary Dark Knight, and he was the hope of the underworld. He was the one that solely closed the portal to mankind to not let the demons, rule out into the human world. And he became a god in all 4 Devil May Cry games. His name was just shouted out in legend. Now in here,
they were worshiping him in Devil May Cry 4. They, this guy was shit. And look what they did to him. But continue. Now, I'm sorry. I'm just not happy with that.
Now they made him into some little punk ass person where he's in a love story. Of course, that makes had to make somewhat sense of some of his past. But then they show parts where he's running away in the castle, and you're going through a whole memory lapse with Dante and stuff like that. And then later on, you find out that he's in prison, in hell, banished in chains, being bitch slapped by little demon spawns. I'm like, wait a minute. Are you fucking kidding me now? This is not if you remember the part in Spawn the movie where this guy was just sitting there beating the shit out of him, and he had him Chandel in chains, and he was just making his way with them and stuff.
Yeah.
That's technically what they're doing with Sparta. And he can't be going out like that.
Yeah,
why hype him up for 4 games and then make him a bitch now? Why?
Well, but I will say, shifting gears, I did like how they did explore Dante and Virgil's mother. That was pretty cool, and it was almost as if, and I remember we're at odds over the whole Tekken movie, where Jin's relationship with Jun Kazama and how he got pumped up at the end when Jun got killed and all that. That was pretty cool. That's something that somebody can relate to. That's one thing I think Ninja did get right. But I wish, that's something that was lacking in the other Devil May Cry games, is because, Dante lost a mother and a brother to evil, and that was it. They never explained anything about the family origin, and I like that aspect in this game. It's just that the way that people were portrayed, Sparta was up here, now he's down here, and Eva actually got a lot more spotlight on her, which that was clever. Points for Ninja Theory on that one. Do you agree or disagree? And it's okay to disagree with me on that.
I agree.
But I did like to see that.
I definitely agree with what you're trying to say. It's just I'm just still baffled about the fact that why go through so much trouble to try to change the entire course of the game. I understand that it's still a reboot, but oh my god, how many people you fucking made so bad for this character design that we have on the stream right now solely, and then now you hit us with the story.
Yep. He's our silent guest right now. So Dante has to sit down, shut the fuck up, know his role, and shut his mouth. He's just gonna sit here and not say a fucking word. All right. Now moving on to another aspect of the story, the predictability. And this is major spoiler. If you don't want to, be blown up by this, make sure you kind of skip at least a 2 minutes ahead. Now, obviously, I will say one thing: the final battle, or the second to last boss battle, was pretty cool. It was worthy of a Devil May Cry game when you're fighting Mundus in his demon form. That was cool. I liked it. It wasn't horrible. But it's. I think it was up there with some of the bosses of Devil May Cry 4. Okay, I think that last boss battle with Mundus was interesting, and I give him points for it. I mean, it was kind of as if some of the other bosses that you fight along the way kind of preps you for the final battle. You know, like when you're fighting the secret ingredient and how you have to keep latching off on different ledges when, you know, all the acid is hitting the floor and stuff so you don't get fucked up. I mean, it was pretty much the same yet different. And I think they took a cue from Onimusha 4, like one of the first boss battles you run into with Soke. I said, all right, that wasn't bad. I mean, and I still maintain my position where I'm heated at Ninja Theory for how they were a bit arrogant with, oh, our shit is better than the original. It's not. It's different. There's still a lot that they could have taken from the original series, but towards the end, the boss battle wasn't too bad. Nelson, what are your thoughts on, you know, the whole Mundus battle?
I mean, I would have to say it was a lot more better than any boss battle within the game. I could definitely tell you that much because when we do explain the gameplay portion of it, people will understand more. But it was just like, there was just no creativity when it came to the other bosses within the reboot of Devil May Cry. This one actually felt like you had some par with, remember in Devil May Cry 4 when Dante had Virgil's sword and he was fighting that humongous giant angel statue, like nearly at the end of the game? There's like somewhat significance of that point. That I would give it to some par.
That's what I was saying.
But other than that, like, all the other bosses in the new reboot was just like, you know, thumbs down in my opinion, though.
Matter of fact, the only thing I'm gonna disagree with, the bad news demon, that was cool. That was really cool. I had to say, the fact that you go into the TV network and you're actually fighting this thing, and it was this all digital. Like, I'm like, okay, that was interesting. And, you know, before I close the book on this particular portion with the story, overall, you know, Virgil turning bad was obvious. You know, it was just the whole Sparta thing. You can't just have somebody fall from grace like that, you know. And they never show his face. I mean, they show Eva's face and they show, but Sparta, you never see his face in pictures. And, you know, like the family portrait, you see the face out, and then like that whole oil painting where you get the demon weapon. You know, it's all like torn out. I mean, if you're going to give the guy some mystery, make sure, you know, he's portrayed as the badass that produced the two badass guys of the series, or the original series. But overall, the story wasn't horrible. It was a bit emo for Dante. His personality is vastly different from his last incarnation. And Nelson, they did try really hard to make him more like Devil May Cry 3, but with a harder edge, because he didn't curse like that in the original series.
No,
am I right?
He did not curse this excessive at all. Only series that he actually like cursed was probably just one. Like he went off on one. I could say that much.
Okay. Now, as far as the story, is there anything you want to add to that before we move on to aspects of the game?
As of like story, no. But I guess in the sense of the story, their sense of dialogue, I guess I'll add on to it. Ninja Theory, next time when you release a game, make sure you check your dialogue before anything. You had not only bad grammar, not only bad pronunciation of the game, but you also forgot particular names of certain moves. That's why you had to change almost every single move in the entire game of the names you do not know.
What, million stab to trillion stab? Like, wow, really? Like,
yeah, it
okay. Wasn't hard. Again, it wasn't horrible, but it's still some things.
It could have been somewhat of a sense that you could have pronounced, you know, Mundus instead of Mundus. Like, what the hell is a Mundus? Does anyone know what a Mundus is?
Probably a mango from Brooklyn.
Dad, yo.
Oh, let me stop. All right, now shifting gears, presentation and gameplay. Now, the gameplay itself, I am a bit on the fence. Now, here's the thing: had this game not had the Devil May Cry name to it, I would say the game is fun. Now, some of you may agree or disagree, but here's why I say this. The gameplay, if it wasn't a Devil May Cry game and you're chaining all this stuff and, I mean, switching on the fly between your two angel weapons and your two demon weapons, I mean, I came up with some, like, ridiculous combos in there. And I think the combo system is a little too forgiving because it was harder to get stylish as opposed to this game. It's like they're giving it away. Like, oh yeah, you know, if you switch to your axe, your demon axe, and you're hitting it, it's like, oh man, like when I was doing the classic Dante video on the PC, I got like a triple S, and I was even trying, you know, I mean, I guess the gameplay was made to be a little more accessible to the casual gamer, which is Capcom's new campaign. They just want everybody to be able to, hey, you know what? I don't play this a lot, but I can pull this off. But the hardcore guys, if they want to go further, they can. I kind of get it, but then again, don't make it so easy where you're just throwing away triple S's to people. But I mean, the way that you can switch between your weapons, I think the original series, I think, matter of fact, Devil May Cry 4 Dante was able to do this. So that's just something that I guess they took nods to the original series. But I have to say the whole demon pull and all that stuff, mixing up the combos, they're a little more accessible than past games. The past games are more hardcore oriented where you have to know, or hey, the learning curve, get in there, learn what to do, and you'll be set. This game, you can flail around for the first half of the game, but afterwards, you're going to have to know you can't be using, like, angel weapons on demon guys because it's just going to repel you back and you're going to get fucked up. But I think at the heart of it, the intent was to make it fun. They succeeded at that, but it's still not something where that's a Devil May Cry worthy. Like, Devil May Cry 3 Dante and Devil May Cry 4 Dante set the bar so high, you know, in trying to introduce something new, you have to exceed what the standard that those two games left. Okay? So, Nelson, what are your thoughts on the gameplay mechanics?
Okay, see, this is what I was waiting on to talk about. Alright, let me start off by saying that the gameplay mechanic of the game is probably by far the worst I've ever seen in a Devil May Cry game. The reason why I state this is because from Devil May Cry 3 and 4, it's basically, as what you said, Alex, it is a learning curve, but they put it in the aspect as the learning curve of a fighting game. If you was good at a fighting game, you would definitely excel at Devil May Cry 3 and 4 because it was so to the point where it was split-second decisions when you're doing the weapon switch. In the new Devil May Cry reboot, if you guys want to, time it, there's a 2-second delay on all your weapons. Even when you use a weapon to switch between them, there's a delay. You can't just go back and forth because of the clunky controls. And of course, when you was implemented into the jump cancel, such as in Devil May Cry 3 and in 4, where you're able to do combos, in here, you could do the jump cancels without an enemy. You don't need an enemy to do a jump cancel, and you could go straight up from the ground to the end of the level design and break the game. Why do
yeah,
that?
Shinwar had mentioned that. He had mentioned that. I said, oh, okay, well, I mean, I guess they just made it, again, a little more accessible to the casual gamer, per se. But, yeah,
they did
continue.
make it very easy. Also, I want to point out another thing, as I was saying with the Dante Inferno reference. If you guys remember, Dante Inferno was both platform and action at the same time. But in the new Devil May Cry reboot, they basically wanted to show you that Devil May Cry could take a little bit of a jump. And they put more platforming within the game than what we're used to is just like going from level to level fighting, constant demon spawns. And also, in the previous Devil May Cry games, they don't give you the hint or the sign of, okay, use this weapon to destroy this enemy. You had to literally figure it out. Just like if I want to put it in the sense of old school fighting games. We didn't have a training mode where it taught you all the moves. We didn't have a trial mode. And Devil May Cry, the reboot, nowadays someone has like a trial mode, like, okay, angel weapon, you see this ice enemy? This is an angel. You use this weapon. This is a demon fire spawn, use the fire one on him. It basically showed you like if we was retarded. So it basically made it so much easier for anyone to get into, come up with any combos. The triple S rating, you can easily get that, not even by hitting no one. You can actually sit there, wait for the last second, counter the enemy, and hit either X or whatever on your keyboard, and you instantly get triple S for the entire level. You don't need to do nothing else. You can walk through the entire level. Doesn't matter what time you finish the level, because I've done it many times before. I got triple S. The game is just made to the point where, in my opinion,
it's just casual. It's casual friendly. Now, here's another thing that I didn't like, and I don't mean to cut you off. I'm just adding it so you can continue further. Castlevania Lords of Shadow had the light and dark magic, right? Devil May Cry, the original series, had its unique playstyle. You know, you had your Trickster, your Swordmaster, you had your Royal Guard, you had all that cool stuff that was Devil May Cry. But then, when they were taking this element, whether it was intentional or not, it made it not as unique. I mean, I felt like I was, in essence, playing a faster Lords of Shadow. You know, switching between my weapons and all that. I mean, it's not horrible. Don't get me wrong. The game came out better than I thought it was going to be. But then again, it's still not at the level of the other Devil May Cry games for me. You know? But yeah, continue, Nelson. I didn't mean to interject. I just wanted to add that aspect with the light and dark magic.
But you are right about that. But also, on top of that, with the gameplay, to me, I mean, I've heard from other members of the New Fighting Order. I heard fan base comments on YouTube and other stuff like that. In my opinion, I don't feel the game has any sense of urgency. And what I mean by that is, like, as I was shown by one of my friends on a video on YouTube, if you played the beginning of the demo, which will be mission 4 for you guys, when you're going to the last part where the church, where Dante busts through and whatnot, and you're supposed to run and jump on the little rocks that are, like, breaking apart for you, you know you can walk that entire part until you feel like jumping? Did you guys know that?
Really?
Did you guys know that you do not have to care? I could eat a bucket of chicken right now, not die. I could finish the whole thing and still be doing that part. And not die. Like that's the most...
You know what? The game is a bit easier than the other Devil May Cry games. I mean, because remember when I was playing HD Collection, you heard me cursing, playing Devil May Cry 1? I'm like, what the F, man? Like, come on. So it just... I guess, Nelson, we're in an age now that either we sink or swim, adapt with the games becoming easier so that more people would play them, or more accessibility. It's like the companies are going now for the big buck, the initial sale, bam, and the hope that DLC will continue to get the revenue going for them or so. But, I mean, the gameplay is not horrible. It's fun. There's a lot of versatility to it. It's not as bad as I was wanting it to be. Same thing with Resident Evil. I was so pissed off at Capcom. I wanted that game to be shit, and it wasn't. It's not as bad as people make it out to be, because I still enjoy that game. You know, so, and Resident Evil 6, that is. So, the game is not as bad as I thought. However, there's just some things that just aren't really there for me. But one thing I will say, the level design, beautiful. I'm not gonna lie, and Nelson, you can't deny it. Some of the levels in that game, the whole concept behind, even with the platforming stuff, you look around, you're like, oh man, this is pretty cool. And how Limbo manipulates gravity and properties of how objects behave. I mean, I will not lie, that was smart. The only thing, I don't like how the whole Limbo thing was like the Matrix. Like, hey, everybody's under control from virility, and the drink that the secret ingredient was spiking to put people in this trance or whatever. And only Dante and the Order and Virgil and Kat knew about the real world, which was like the whole Limbo thing. I mean, that was not original. The whole shadow and dark magic wasn't original. But the level design, I must say, was top notch. I think that was probably one of the strongest aspects, especially when you're going to fight the bad news boss and when you're running into zero gravity and all that. I mean, that was pretty cool. Even the nightclub stage. I mean, that I like that with the whole colors. And, I'm partially colorblind, so it started fucking with me a little bit. But when you just see the effort and the intent behind that, I wish that if they did a true sequel to the other Devil May Cry games and put some of that in, the old playstyle with those levels, that would be an acceptable addition to the Devil May Cry series. So, I mean, Nelson, what are your thoughts on the level design? Because some of them just, to me, look good.
The level design, I do have to admit, it was pretty random at points because it made it to the point where it was like, okay, you're just walking, la 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 la, then the stage is just breaking, just diminishing, rapidly like imploding black goo, and stuff like that. Like if you ever saw the first Power Ranger movie with that Ooze guy that they had to fight and shit. Yeah,
Ivan Ooze.
That kind of took me back. But also, if you look at it real carefully, I don't know if any of you guys, probably the only one out of this whole group of ours would be DeMizzle that would know about this. If you play Splinter Cell Conviction, and if you guys remember the part of any of the level when it had a critical point in the mission, you will have like flashing words come out, and it will tell you either a significance of what to do or something is going down. That will reflect on the stage, and I don't know why they went to that point to make it seem like, oh, kill Dante, you're dead. I mean, we all know that from watching the trailer that they wanted to murder Dante with that utmost intent. And also another thing,
but it was interesting. It was interesting. It's almost as if the stage was an enemy too.
Was.
And
it was, because if you remember Kat saying that, the entire city is trying to kill you. Like you will remember that part in Mission 4. Also, just like a little random thing, if you guys really don't give a fuck about it, I really don't care either. If you guys play Max Payne 1 and 2, if you look at Dante's health bar or the HUD of his health, that's Max Payne right there.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, you have to admit, there was a lot of effort put behind the game. It's just some of the decisions that were made were a little bit too arrogant for me. Which, like, for instance, now going into the presentation of the game, there was a lot of cool presentation. Music was all right, but it's not up to the Devil May Cry 3 soundtrack. Nothing will beat the Devil May Cry 3 soundtrack. Bottom line is, Devils Never Cry. Fuck that, man. That was literally the anthem for Devil May Cry, hands down. But I know the Carnival stage had like a nod. Because if you listen to some of the lyrics, it almost seemed like
it was like a slower version of theme.
Yeah. I was like, all right, fine. But it wasn't the soundtrack for Devil May Cry 3 and Devil May Cry 4 blows it away. Bottom line, the Dante's design thing. That's a part of the presentation. They just refuse to accept the fact that some of us don't like it. And in the beginning, those of you who say, hey, you know what, get over that little joke that Ninja Theory put, out of all the chaos going on in that fucking first stage, and out of nowhere, a wig is going to fall on Dante's head. Really? I feel like the Miz right now. Really? Like, it's almost as if they were taunting some of us, the hardcore fans. It's bad enough that people were skeptical about the game to begin with. Then to add insult to injury, like, wow, why do that? That was another thing with arrogance. This is why I haven't fully accepted the game. I just gave it a try. Okay? I just said, hey, you know what? I'm going to try it as a video game journalist. I have my personal opinion on it, but what Nelson and I were talking about, a lot of it is just, facts, and some of it's subjective too, but we said some good things about the games, and we mentioned some bad things, like the lack of a lock-on feature, which was synonymous with the Devil May Cry series. I mean, to be able to focus on a different guy, especially what I really miss is the whole trickster thing where Dante was able to aim in two different directions. That's long gone. You know what I mean? It's just, And on a final note with presentation, that Devil Trigger, that was just piss poor.
That was disgusting.
I'm sorry.
Was disgusting.
The fact that it's just like he looks like regular Dante, okay? If he's this is Devil May Cry, he's supposed to transform into some badass Onimusha shit, okay? But oh yeah, you know what? I'm gonna do some like fucking what was that game? Like Max Payne and going to slow everything down. Like everybody's up in there. Yeah, and it was lacking. The Devil May Cry reboot, Devil Trigger failed. I'm sorry, I barely used it. You can get through the game without using it.
That is true.
You know, I think that, but there's one part, and we said there's going to be spoilers. When you're fighting Virgil, the boss character, there's a portion where you need to use that. So when he's splitting up into like the white jacket and the doppelgangers, you switch in there, and he can take damage that way. So, I mean, I want to like the game, but there's just so many things that they strayed away. They alienated the original fan base for Devil May Cry. And if it's made for this new generation who's defending it and saying, hey, what's the problem? What's the problem? Then obviously they're the post-2005 gamers. They don't understand that Devil May Cry was too established and the storyline too unfinished for it to go this route. But, hey, the game is here. And I'll have you know, Nelson, it didn't sell really well at all. It actually sold a third of what Devil May Cry 4 sold. And then Devil May Cry 4 didn't sell to expectation, but it sold vastly better than this. And the only reason why I believe Devil May Cry 4 didn't sell too well is because Capcom once again tried to introduce a new main character where like, give us Dante. It's almost as if we're like the Mega Man fans, and which I am. We want something, and you refuse to give it to us. Like, Devil May Cry 4 should have been more about Dante and have Nero as like, okay, you can alternate missions instead of forcing that character on you like Metal Gear Solid 2 with Raiden. And that's why people had such a violent reaction to that, you know? So that's pretty much my synopsis on it. I'm going to start giving it a score after Nelson gives his closing remarks. So, Nelson, anything else on this game that you'd like to mention for the audience?
Basically, what do I really want to close out with? The game had a lot of expectations, and it really took a lot of people's confidence away by implementing all these new things that Ninja Theory and coexisting with Capcom wanted to show within a Western side audience. My thing is, one, don't bash out the original, thing from like Japan, if that's what you want to call it, Ninja Theory. Just leave it how it is, because if it wasn't for that, you would have never been on this project to make a reboot. So I don't really need that.
Well said.
What's another thing I like to mention? There could have been a lot more time in development with making heavier dramatic boss battles, because Devil May Cry was somewhat known for like dramatic boss battles. Like, in perfect example, Devil May Cry 3 has been by far the best boss battles I've ever seen in a Devil May Cry game. It was just nothing but bullshit, one after another, in a continuous string.
What about the Devil May Cry 1 boss? When you're fighting Mundus and the whole flying thing, and Dante transforms to look like his father almost.
Oh, but that's
like,
nearly the end of the game, though.
Trigger,
I'm
almost.
talking about within almost every boss battle aspect. It's like, in 3, whoa, just like, that shit just took it to a whole nother level. What else? Do I have anything else to comment? Trying to see, because I know there was a lot we went over.
Well, Nelson, I am proud of you. I thought you were going to go really in on the game, but we had to remain objective and not put too. Yeah, and it's almost as if, like I said, Ninja Theory, some of the stuff, the taunting with that hair thing. Fuck you guys for that. That's, I don't know. Ninja Theory must know something we don't, because the developers were even saying, we don't care how few titles or how few units we move. It's something that we would like to play.
Yep.
Capcom probably signed a deal with them for like 3 games or something. I don't know. We shall see. We shall see. But in closing, I would say the music's not horrible. It was a lot more heavy metal than I wanted it to be. I wish they had again more Devil May Cry 3 style music. So I give the sound. I give it about a 7. Gameplay, you're gonna be shocked. I give the gameplay about an 8. The whole combat system, it was interesting, but it's not a Devil May Cry. Devil May Cry 3, 10, perfect for me. But this, it kind of fell a bit short, so I'm giving it an 8. Presentation, I'm still, it's just Dante's design that fucks that up for me. But the presentation with the way Limbo behaves, I'll give it about a 7. And just overall, the game to me is a 7. It's not super great, but it's not horrible. The saving grace are the level design and just interesting combat mechanism. So, final verdict from Alexlexus, flat 7. Nelson, what about you?
If you want to break it down like how you did, if I had to go for sound, I'll probably have to say the sound was most important to me because that's what makes somewhat of a game. You need to actually feel like you're grasping into the game when you hear like all the sound effects, the explosions, or whatever it may be. I'm going to give this probably the highest rating out of any other categories I'll speak about. So I'll give it a 9 due to the fact that it made you feel like whatever the game was made of, the attention, it made you feel like you was playing whatever part of it. So the sound got a 9. As of gameplay-wise, I'm going to give it a 1. I had way too much expectation for the game. Way too much. And if you don't believe me, guys, go to YouTube right now. Either type in Devil May Cry 3 or Devil May Cry 4 Sword Master Tournament. They had tournaments on combos. That's how bullshit those games were. So the gameplay for this one will be getting a 1. As of gameplay, as of as a presentation, presentation with the whole story base and everything like that, and how like the game looked and the aspect of it, I'll give it a 5. I'll leave it medium. I'll give it a 5 because it somewhat tried to give it a more in-depth storyline, and it tried to be somewhat creative with it in a sense. But as of an overall game, as like as an entirety, I'll probably have to leave it at a 4, just due to the fact that it took 4 games for us to love this series for the way it was. You try to release a 5th installment with Capcom's fucking stamp approval on it, and you diminish the entire shit for me. I was highly disgusted. Like, I even went to the point saying that I was never going to buy the game, and I have still yet to buy the game. I played it, by all means, but I don't have it in my house. I have the HD collection and Devil May Cry 4 sitting right there, because that's what we love. So the overall game for this shitty character right here gets a 4.
Well, there you have it, folks. It gets a 4 from Nelson. I give it a 7 because there's some redeeming qualities about it. But if from the way the game ended, it looks like there's going to be a sequel. So if Dante's hair doesn't change, or if his appearance doesn't change, and if he doesn't have like a full-out Devil Trigger, then to me, I don't know if I'm going to even stick around with this series. And in closing, considering how Capcom is handling their franchises and they're possibly rebooting Resident Evil, leave Onimusha alone. I was going to ask for that, but no. Leave it alone. Oh no, don't touch it. It's fine the way it is. Leave classics. Call it a day. Maybe it's a good thing that we're not getting Mega Man installments, Mega Man X installments. Just leave it alone. Leave it alone. All right. So this has been Alexlexus and Nelson Rios with our extensive review on Devil May Cry reboots. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you're following us on Twitch TV. Over time, we're going to have some announcements. And, if you'd like to be a guest on our show, get in touch with Nelson or myself via Facebook, or leave us a message. PM me here on the YouTube channel. All right. And we'll, I've always wanted to make this an interactive project. And just so you know, New Fighting Order is 50-50 between Nelson and myself. So if you guys feel more comfortable going to Nelson, by all means do so. All right. So, Nelson, do you have any parting words for the audience before we log off?
Just like I said, guys, that's what Alex said. I couldn't say it any better. Just keep watching our podcast, keep watching our streams, keep watching our YouTube page because there's gonna be a lot of dramatic changes. Because within the last several weeks, I've been getting a lot of emails of several game updates that will make our lives a lot easier. I'm pretty sure you guys probably know about it already with the whole change of Call of Duty, them implementing in-game live streaming from YouTube and Twitch TV.
I tried it. And it actually works. But I think they still need to tweak it a little bit. But we're going to have a separate podcast on that alone. And
Yes.
we'll probably go hard on that one. But, all right. So that's all I got for you. Nelson, anything before we log off?
That's it.
All right. New Fighting Order fans, this is NMO and TSG Fighting Game League, merged as one, bringing you our soon-to-be back on track weekly podcast. So, again, if you want to be involved, get in touch with us. The more support we get, the better off we're going to be. We can grow and do bigger and better things. Shout out to Angry Joe, Alpha Omega Sin, and all you other YouTube vloggers out there. We'll catch you next time on NMO TSG Fighting Game League New Fighting Order podcast.